This is Part 3, Episode 95. Xu Tianran's furious face instantly froze when he heard those words. A strange light flickered beneath his eyes. This seemed to be the only piece of good news amidst his colossal losses today. The emperor's death meant that he, who was the crown prince, had a chance to ascend to the throne. He had enough influence and power to support him in his bid for the throne, and the strongest resistance that he faced came from Xu Guozheng's lineage. But how could Xu Guozheng survive that tremendous explosion? Suddenly, everything doesn't seem all that bad. Xu Tianran gritted his teeth as he looked up at the troop of evil soul masters who had already gathered in the sky. He suddenly cried out painfully, "Father, father! How can you leave just like that?" 2 lines of tears streamed down his cheeks, but nobody knew whether they came from grief or from regret. There were mountains all around, and not a single ray of sunlight shone through. This was the center of the Sun-Moon Empire's western mountains, and this gigantic valley was more than 5 kilometers around. This valley was exceptionally spherical. The valley sank down into a hemisphere, and the bottom was filled with clear lake water. The lake water gleamed, and it was so clear and crystalline that the lake bed could be seen. Several shadows broke the tranquility of this place right at this moment. They were soaring through the sky, and they quickly arrived above the lake's surface. One would realize upon closer inspection that there were 4 people. 2 of them had black veils covering their faces, while they each carried someone in their hands. One was a young man, and the other was a young girl. The young man and the young girl were crying out in alarm and surprise. However, they couldn't move at all, and they couldn't struggle even if they wanted to. The 2 people in black swiftly brought them to the center of the lake and hovered in midair. They stared at the water beneath them, and they raised their captives above their heads. "You, what are you trying to do?" The young man shouted dismally with a trembling voice. One of their captors answered him. His voice sounded a little husky as he said, "We want to organize a grand sacrificial rite, and we need a living human as our sacrifice. We happen to have captured the 2 of you, who also happen to be married to each other. Speak now, who wishes to be sacrificed? We will let the other person go." "No, please. I beg you, let us go." Judging by her age, the young girl didn't seem like she had been married for long. Her voice was quivering at this moment, but she stared at her husband with a pleading and begging look in her eyes. Her husband stared back at her with sluggish eyes. Suddenly, he roared at the top of his voice, "I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Use her. Use her as your sacrifice." The wife stared at her husband, who she had made vows with, and her eyes were filled with disbelief. How can you do that? Didn't you say that you would protect me with your life? You're such a liar." Her husband howled hysterically, "We only live once, and this life is gone when we die. What about you? Do you think you're any better? What was that look in your eyes before this? Don't you want me to sacrifice myself for you? I'm so nice and good to you, so why won't you sacrifice yourself for me so that I can live?" "Nonsense. I want to live, but I only want to live with you. Go to hell, you're the one who should die. Kill him, kill him." The wife's emotions had become a little hysterical and distraught. 2 chilly lights flashed and slashed the couple's throats at the same time. Fresh blood erupted from their gaping wounds like a fountain, and poured onto the lake's surface beneath them. The couple's eyes were filled with incredulity and disbelief, and they seemed like they wanted to ask something, but they were just no longer able to do so. One of their captors muttered disdainfully, "This is the fickleness of human nature, and everyone goes their separate ways when disaster arrives. How many times have we done this? This has never failed before. This place is quite peculiar, though it can only be primed by the lives and blood of a man and woman who are in love, but betray each other in the end." The other man in black lowered his voice and said, "Cut the crap. Quickly, drain them of their blood so that we can go back and make a successful report on our task. This place will be activated 2 hours after it has been primed, and even saints can't escape from this when that time arrives. Any humans inside will be." The first man in black seemed to recall something, and said nothing more. The couple's blood was swiftly drained, and their lives came to an end. Kaplunk, kaplunk. Two corpses plunged into the lake, and the two men in black turned and soared into the sky. They departed rapidly, as if they were running from something, and vanished in the blink of an eye. In the few minutes after they disappeared, the lake's surface began to ripple and surge. The couple had just dropped into the lake, but their blood undulated and gradually began to lighten as strange colors started to appear. Those were golden and silver hues. Golden light flickered while the silver light rippled, and they permeated the lake's surroundings at an alarming rate. "Let's go," Elder Xian instructed the company. Shrek Academy's company immediately set out once more after their short rest and continued westward. They had no other choice at this point. The colossal explosion in the middle of Radiant City would undoubtedly end this season's grand competition without proper closure. The Doluo continent's three main countries' tense relationships with the Sun Moon Empire would undoubtedly be aggravated because of this explosion as well. The Sun Moon Empire's citizens probably hadn't really supported war before this, but it wasn't hard to imagine what their opinions would be like after this incident. Elder Xian's expression seemed a little better after he listened to He Kaitu's explanation. If the Sun Moon Empire's death count wasn't as bad as it seemed, then their operation could only be described as impeccable. The company could only progress through the Western Mountains because they were afraid that flying through the air would draw attacks from the Sun Moon Empire's long-range soul tools. Everyone in the company was relatively powerful, and they scaled hill after hill as they pushed forward. They arrived within the Western Mountains' inner regions in no time. However, a strange atmosphere appeared right at this moment. "This place looks very familiar. I think we were here 2 hours ago." Hu Yuhao was back inside his human-shaped soul tool. He had plugged one Class 6 milk bottle in each of the machine's reserve slots. With these 2 milk bottles supporting him, he could spare a lot more energy to recover his spiritual power and his soul power throughout the journey. The Western Mountain could present unforeseen problems and obstacles, so Hu Yuhao had his spiritual detection activated this entire time. He alternated between different directions as he surveyed and scouted far into the distance, searching for problems that might appear. He hadn't discovered anything throughout their journey so far, but the feeling that something was wrong became stronger and stronger. Hu Yuhao didn't know why he was feeling that, but he was confident that something bad was about to befall them. The ominous feeling in his mind seemed to mature at this moment. "Stop, everyone." Elder Xian drifted over to Hu Yuhao's side. He had always had faith in Hu Yuhao's spiritual power. "Are you saying that we've circled back? Can it be that there is a maze inside the Western Mountains? Such a problem shouldn't occur with our ability to discern direction and our navigational abilities." Elder Xian looked up at the stars in the night sky as he spoke. Observing the stars at night had always been a good way of telling direction. Hu Yuhao lowered his voice and said, "I am positive, Elder Xian, that we've been to this place before. The reason is because I did a single direction sweep in this place before, and there are still some remnant spiritual imprints of that on the plants around us." "That can't be wrong." Elder Xian's expression instantly grew solemn. He was a rank 98 transcendent Doluo, a powerful being who was almost an ultimate Doluo, yet not even he had detected anything wrong. They were going around in circles, and this proved that the situation was quite serious. "What do you think we should do?" Elder Xian lowered his voice as he asked Hu Yuhao. Hu Yuhao answered, "The sky is too dark at this moment. I've attempted to reach far into the distance with spiritual detection, but the further I go, the less clear our surroundings become. I can only feel out the rough landscape, but I'm unable to use my spiritual power to do any in-depth observations. Should we rest and wait for daybreak? Dawn is coming soon." Elder Xian nodded and said, "All right, let's wait for daybreak then. Rest where you are everyone, and stay together. Don't get separated from each other. Lushuan, you're responsible for arranging the shifts for night watch. Those who are resting, meditate as soon as possible." Zhong Lushuan immediately went ahead to arrange the night shifts. She was the inner courtyard's eldest senior sister, and she was also part of the Sea God's Pavilion, so she had always been efficient at arranging such things. It didn't take long before a small-scale campsite was established on a location that was relatively higher than their surroundings. Several titled Doluor, including the martial god Doluor Xian Lina, rested near the edge of the campsite, so that they could protect everyone. There were 5 titled Doluor who were part of Elder Xian's company, and there were 4 transcendent Doluor, including Elder Xian. However, they had quite a few people to protect. The Tang sect comprised the largest group: Bei Bei, He Kai Tu, Shu Sansha, Jiang Nan Nan, Xiao Xiao, Hui Yuhao, Wang Donga, Ji Juechen, Jing Ziyan, Nan Chocho, and Nuna. There was also one other person that Hui Yuhao had roped in for the operation last night, and that was Jiao Delu, who possessed a ranked carving knife of his own. Hui Yuhao had used some rare metals to completely bring this self-established soul engineer over to his side. Besides the Tang Sex Company, the titled Doluor also had to protect the team from Shrek Academy, who had come to participate in the tournament: Wang Choa, Dai Huabin, Zhu Lu, Zhu Enchen, Cao Jinxian, Lan Susu, Lan Luoluo, Wufeng, Ning Tian, and Xia Huanyue. In addition to their eldest senior sister, Zhong Lishuan, these titled Doluor had quite a few people to protect. The 6 titled Doluor's most important task was to escort these people. There were more than 20 of them safely back to Shrek Academy. Dai Huabin and the others from Shrek Academy's team were full of doubt and suspicion as they watched the mysterious and secretive looks on the others from the Tang sect. They were deeply shaken by the frightening explosion before this, and they also noticed that Elder Xian had inquired of the Tang Sex Company in private. Did that mean the Tang sect had something to do with that explosion? The Tang sect's company naturally huddled together. They had hustled throughout the night, and Hui Yuhao was naturally the most exhausted one. He almost instantly entered meditation, and his fatigued expression didn't look so good under the firelight. Shu Qianran nodded contentedly and said, "I have the same intention too. To defeat our external foes, we have to pacify opposition within our borders first. I want to take care of the internal situation, and take this opportunity to exterminate traitors. For this, I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you, Imperial Tutor." At this point, a cold gleam crossed Shu Qianran's eyes. The corners of his mouth twitched as he betrayed a strong killing intent. The mysterious Imperial Tutor said plainly, "That's right. Some people must be held accountable for this incident. As for those who are faultless, we can say that they perished in the explosion. I'll follow the list that you gave me earlier." "Yes," said Shu Tiaran as he nodded. The Imperial Tutor said, "Then, let me take this chance to congratulate your Majesty on your premature ascension to the throne." Shu Tianran said sincerely, "When the Sun Moon Empire unites the continent, the Holy Ghost Church shall be the national religion. At that time, I'll name the founder of the church as the national god. All shall hold you in reverence, and you shall be elevated on a divine pedestal." "That's for later, let's take care of things one step at a time," the Imperial Tutor said. He did not appear very excited. He nodded at Shu Qianran and then turned to leave. When he reached the entrance, he stopped and turned around. "We can't devote all our strength over at the Western Mountain yet. However, I've already activated the mysterious land there. We'll trap them there and then take care of them later. By then, Shrek Academy will be totally drained. It'll be impossible for them to resist us anymore." Shu Qianran said, "I had the same plan. However, can we really trap them?" The mysterious Imperial Tutor intoned, "That place imprisoned my grandfather for 100 years. He was not weaker than Uncle Long. In the end, he managed to take some things out from there, but they were just a small portion of the mysterious land. Mere mortals cannot resist that place. Once something goes wrong, it'll result in imprisonment spanning decades until death. After I activate it, even a titled Doluor can't fly there. He can only leave after going through various trials and tribulations. My grandfather made 3 errors when he was there and hence, he was trapped for 100 years. Did we not try it before? Among those whom we threw inside, less than 10% of them survived. I've already instructed Little Feng to bypass the Western Mountain, and got 4 of my elders to guard the exit. Even if they escape, they will still be killed." "Good," Shu Qianran said as he nodded his head. "It's all up to you, Imperial Tutor." The sky gradually lit up. When Hui Yuhao opened his eyes once more, purple and gold light shone in his eyes. His energy was indescribably vibrant. The mysterious three-way cultivation had aided him, Wang Donga, and Wang Chua immensely. While they only cultivated for around 4 hours, Hu Yuhao was able to increase his soul power by cultivating the difficult ultimate strength martial soul. Furthermore, the combined power of the purple and gold soul power was able to erode the ultimate ice, the origin energy of heaven and earth, in his lower limbs at twice the usual speed. It was akin to cultivating after ingesting distilled wine. Wang Donga and Wang Chua opened their eyes too. Their two highly similar eyes, which reflected vastly different personalities, also shone with a layer of purple and gold light. Wang Donga experienced the greatest increase in soul power, because she did not have an ultimate martial soul. Wang Chua and Hu Yuhao both possessed ultimate martial souls and hence, their increase was less than Wang Donga's. However, it was still substantial. The three of them looked at each other. An odd atmosphere permeated their surroundings. Even Wang Donga sensed that something felt wrong. Does this mean that the three of us are together? But. Hu Yuhao touched his nose, nodded at Wang Chua and said, "Thank you." Wang Chua stared at him, then shook her head as she said, "It's fine. This benefits all of us." With that, she turned and walked away. Wang Donga's gaze turned soft. While Hu Yuhao thanked Wang Chua, he said nothing else to her. It was clear who he was close with, and who he was not. She liked how Hu Yuhao did not try to beat about the bush. This clearly indicated to Wang Chua that there was no chance between Hu Yuhao and her. Hence, she would not develop false notions. While this might appear hurtful, it was better to suffer less in relationships. Hu Yuhao raised his head to look at the sky. He was instantly surprised, because he realized that the sky was shrouded by fog 5 meters from the ground. Furthermore, he realized that the fog in the sky was changing color. "Since you have all woken up, come over." Elder Xian's voice wafted over. Quickly, assisted by Wang Donga, Hu Yuhao entered his human-shaped soul tool. Then, he walked over to Elder Xian. The rest had already gathered. There was a solemn expression on Elder Xian's face. Hu Yuhao subconsciously released his spiritual detection. However, he was soon surprised. Despite having released spiritual detection, its radius was no more than 5 meters. Any further, and he felt like a clay cow in the sea. Not only could he not sense anything, but he could also feel something eating away at his spiritual power. How can this be? My spiritual detection can't even see as far as my eyes. Hu Yuhao had never experienced this before. Even in the setting sun forest, which had been saturated with a toxic miasma, he had still been able to use his spiritual detection. Elder Xian looked at Hu Yuhao and said, "You can feel it too, right? Our sensory abilities have been greatly weakened. The fog above our heads is like a cage, trapping us here. If we can't escape, we'll truly be caught in a rut." Wang Chua could not help but ask, "Can we not fly?" Elder Xian shook his head and said, "I tried, but it doesn't work. When I tried, it was as if the entire sky was resisting me. A powerful pressure forced me to land. The strength of this pressure surpasses what a normal person can resist. Even Long Xiaoyao, an ultimate Doluo, would find it impossible." When they heard Elder Xian's words, everyone could not help but gasp. The martial god Doluo Xian Lina frowned and said, "This is strange indeed. However, why did we not detect this when we flew over?" She and Elder Xian had personally flown over the Western Mountain. In one day, they had surveyed the entire Western Mountain, and yet they did not realize that there was something amiss. However, this transformation had now trapped everyone here. How could she and Elder Xian not fault themselves? Elder Xian intoned, "This area appears to be enveloped by a mysterious power. Even the ground is different. I tried to control the earth and burrow through the ground, but I failed. We appear to be trapped in an unbreakable prison." Elder Xian's martial soul, the godly Dao Tai Bu, was an earth-type martial soul. It could manipulate the ground very well. He had tried to use his powerful strength to alter his surroundings and break through the obstacles. However, he failed. "Does anyone have any plans?" "Speak," said Elder Xian, who was depressed and perplexed. However, he managed to keep a straight face. At this moment, he could not panic. If he did, these kids would panic even more. Elder Xian, should we split into groups and explore? We can divide ourselves into smaller groups. This may not be a prison, but a maze instead. Perhaps we can walk out. Dai Huabin asked. Before he could finish his sentence, Bei spoke. No, we can't split up at this time. If you're right and this is indeed a maze, this is still a maze the Sun Moon Empire constructed for us. What if evil soul masters from the Holy Ghost Church are in here with us? The moment we split up, we'll become sitting ducks for them. Dai Huabin's face twitched. However, he did not dare to say anything to Bei. In the inner courtyard, while Bei's position could not compare with Zhong Lishuan's, he was still one of the more powerful members of the younger generation. In particular, his performance against the Holy Ghost sect team left a deep impression on everyone. Elder Xian looked at Hu Yuhao and said, "Speak, Yuhao." Hu Yuhao said, "I've just tried it, and the radius of spiritual detection is no more than 5 meters. It's no better than our sight." "You're right. Here, we are under the suppression of a mystical power, which can't be resisted by mere humans. However, I don't think that it's purely a cage. It must have its secrets. Since it's not something that humans can resist, it was definitely not built by the Sun Moon Empire. Their soul tools have not yet reached this level. Even a Class 10 soul tool could not cover such a huge mountain. Hence, this is a natural formation. The Sun Moon Empire can only control it. Since it's made by nature, it's not a death trap. There's bound to be an escape. I agree with elder brother. At this time, we can't split up. Everyone should concentrate on one direction. Even if we return to where we started off, we'll make observations and discover new things. With these clues, we can improvise further. This is our last resort. Right, Elder Xian said as he nodded. All right, let's consume some of our rations and set off. Yuhao, come with me, I want to ask you something. Yes, Hu Yuhao said as he quickly walked over to Elder Xian in his human-shaped soul tool. How's your recovery? Elder Xian asked. I'm fine, Hu Yuhao replied. Elder Xian nodded and said, that's good. While I believe you, you need to provide me with an explanation for the powers you revealed yesterday at the Radiant City Elite Soul Engineering Tournament. Also, what happened to the person who possessed the Holy Angel? Did you really kill her? Hu Yuhao was shocked. The explosion last night had left a great impact on him, and he had forgotten about the incident with Yigai. Elder Xian, the power I unleashed yesterday, can be said to be my third martial soul. However, I don't think this power comes from our world. Then, he explained Electrolux's origins to Elder Xian in a way he could understand. At this moment, there was no way he could hide the truth. Even with Elder Xian's experience, he was shocked. A sorcerer. A profession in another world. This, Elder Xian regained his senses after a long while. Helplessly, he patted Hu Yuhao's shoulder and said, Yuhao, while your power is unique, you should know what it means to be an evil soul master on this continent. The cooperation between the Sun Moon Empire and the evil soul masters infuriates every soul master. Your power, however, appears similar to those of evil soul masters. Hu Yuhao nodded and said, Elder Xian, I understand what you mean. I won't use this power casually. I won't even use it with my original appearance. The participant of the Radiant City Elite Soul Engineering Tournament was Tang Wu, not Hu Yuhao. Elder Xian sighed in relief and said, it's good that you understand. Your spirit eyes and Ice Jade Empress Scorpion are powerful enough. Train them well. Can you release Yigai now? Hu Yuhao tried, but then shook his head and said, the invisible power here is too strong. I can't communicate with the spectral demiplane teacher Electrolux left me. However, she'll be in no danger inside the demiplane. I've already tried to protect her as much as I could. With her powers, she can go without food for at least half a month. Elder Xian nodded and said, good job. If we can leave this place, we must protect this child with the Holy Angel martial soul. In the future, she will become one of the main forces of resistance against the Holy Ghost Church. Yu Hao, my attitude yesterday was wrong. When I saw such a huge explosion, coupled with your evil soul master-like power, I started to doubt you. Then, I gave it more thought. You were chosen by Elder Mu, how can be there anything wrong with you? However, you must remember that no matter where you are, no matter what you experience, no matter what happens to you, you must be true to yourself. Do you understand? Hui Yu Hao nodded vigorously and said, I will, Elder Xian. Elder Xian smiled slightly and said, now that we're in a death trap, please be careful. Go and have a bite. Now that they had resolved this small conflict, Elder Xian was in a much better mood. Together with Hui Yu Hao, they walked back into the main camp. Everyone had finished their meals by now, and were regrouping. Through Elder Xian's arrangements, everyone was divided into 3 groups. Among them, Shrek's 7 monsters were a group by themselves. They were led by Elder Xian. The team from Shrek split into 2 groups. Wang Qiu'er, Zhong Lishuan, and the main fighting force of the team from Shrek were in one team. They were led by the martial god Doluo Xian Lina. The remaining substitutes, along with the Tang sect substitutes and Jiao Delu, Ji Juechen, Jing Ziyan, and Nan Chocho, formed the biggest group. The other 4 titled Doluo from Shrek Academy were in charge of them. Among these 4 titled Doluo, 2 of them were elders from the Sea God's Pavilion with the strength of transcendent Doluo. They were the strongest team. Elder Xian walked with Shrek's 7 monsters at the front. Xian Lina led the second group in the center. The 4 titled Doluo and the third group stayed at the back. All of the groups had to be able to communicate verbally with each other so that they would not be too far apart. They also tried to leave markings on more distinctive plants as they passed. This was a dumb plan, but it was also their only plan. After they left their marks on all the plants, any plant with no marks would indicate a brand new direction. This was how they moved forward. As they moved forward, they had to be careful. They were not fast, and while the area 5 meters above the ground was not shrouded with a dense fog, there was still a light fog. Coupled with the thick vegetation, they could only see about 10 meters ahead. The entire forest was so quiet it was terrifying. It was as if there was nothing alive there. This silence was so creepy that it terrified everyone. Dai Huabin now felt that his previous suggestion had been very stupid. The silence would have been a lot scarier had they separated, to the point whereby it might drive them mad. They walked forward and soon, 2 hours had passed. Hui Yu Hao walked directly behind Elder Xian. This was done upon his request. Suddenly, he turned to Elder Xian and asked, Elder Xian, do you feel that this feels different from last night? We seem to be on a path with no return. Elder Xian nodded and said, I have the same feeling too. Right now, the path is different from the path yesterday, which made us walk in circles. This could be good news. Now that there was no chance of heading back, they would surely find a possible exit as long as they headed forward. They continued to walk forward. After 2 more hours, Elder Xian was sure they were no longer walking around in circles. Throughout their journey, they did not see any repeated scenery. Furthermore, they did not see the marks which they were leaving on the plants again. While they could not fly, and they could not use their spiritual power for long-range detection, there was a chance that they could walk out of here. This made them content. At this moment, it was already noon. The fog made their surroundings extremely blurry. The air felt heavy. Elder Xian ordered everyone to take a break here. They set up camp like last night. The advantage of numbers demonstrated itself. At the very least, the silence of the forest did not terrify them too much. For those with storage-type soul tools, they brought more than enough food. The only ones with no food were those from the Tang sect. They only had rare metals in their storage-type soul tools. They were only able to eat by asking the elders for some food. Elder Xian sat with Shrek's 7 monsters. As he ate his favorite chicken drumstick, he said, according to the size of the Western Mountain, we should be able to leave this place in 1 more day, if we continue to walk at our current speed. Bei Bei said, let's hope that this is the case, but... While he did not say it, everyone understood what he meant. The Sun Moon Empire brought them here for a reason. How could they escape so easily? Elder Xian looked at him and said, "There's no but. Right now, we can only walk step by step. With our food and water supply, we can last 10 days. If we still can't get out by then." At this point, Elder Xian's face turned severe. He raised his head to look at the sky. Everyone knew what he meant. If they still couldn't escape, he would risk it all and attempt to fly. Perhaps there was still a sliver of hope there. As they spoke, danger suddenly appeared around them. Everyone subconsciously looked in one direction. Then, a gold and silver light surged toward them like a wave. Instantly, it covered every single one of them. Everyone unleashed their most powerful protective skills simultaneously. However, this all-encompassing light did not clash with them. In their hearts, however, they all sensed that something was amiss. What is this? They looked at each other. They were all covered with a layer of faint gold and silver light. For the younger members of Shrek Academy, their faces turned dismal. The unknown was the scariest. No one knew what was going on, and hence, there was no way to resist it. However, they quickly sensed that something was amiss. A powerful attractive force came along with the silver and gold light. The weaker ones were instantly pulled flying in one direction. Elder Xian cried out and raised his hands. Thick yellow light surged forth and enveloped everyone within it. However, the attractive force of the silver and gold light became even stronger. Even the yellow light Elder Xian unleashed was being tugged by it. It started to move in the same direction. What is this? Xian Lina, the martial god Doluo, had a bad temper. She struck out with her right fist, and a powerful cluster of soul power bombarded the silver and gold light. However, after her soul power entered the fog in front of her, nothing happened. One had to know that Xian Lina was one of the more powerful titled Doluo in Shrek Academy. Earlier, when she faced off against the scorpion tiger Doluo Zhongpeng, she was able to stand her ground. Hui Yuhao, who was in the human-shaped soul tool, looked surprised. Light flashed in his mind. Something appeared to be moving in it. A thought flashed through his mind. Gold and silver, attractive force, he had seen something like this somewhere before. However, before he could give it any more thought, the attractive force increased in strength. This time, even Elder Xian could not resist it. Grab onto each other, we can't get separated. Elder Xian shouted. While he could not resist the attractive force, he was still able to ensure everyone stayed together. The yellow light turned into a huge yellow ball of light, which covered everyone. Then, the gold and silver attractive force lifted their huge ball of light into the sky, and sent them flying at breakneck speed into the sky. On the bright side, they had resolved their flight problem. Quickly, everyone was sucked into the thick fog, where they could not even see the fingers on their hands. This video will end here.